Welcome to Council of Geeks. My name is Nathaniel Wayne and I'm joined by Ryan Daly, and we're going to be talking some of the latest geeky trailers to come out. Not Star Wars, because I gave my thoughts on that one before. No, we're going to go to the other end of the spectrum and we're going to talk Batman v Superman and Fantastic Four, and starting with the latest offering from DC, their first teaser to come out. Thoughts?
I know a lot of people were excited about this teaser for Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice. I was not excited for it. Were you?
No.
It sounded like they were doubling down on a lot of what I didn't like about Man of Steel. The darkness, the tone, the presentation of Superman as something to be feared and hated and shunned by the people of Earth. That's not the Superman that I particularly care for. Seeing that reinforced ad nauseum in this teaser just turned me off completely.
Yeah.
And the question that I kept coming back with was, if Superman is the character that is hated and feared in this universe, what does that leave for Batman? Because that's Batman's shtick. And these characters, when they work, it's because they're polar opposite. And they bring out what is special in each other. The sense of hope and aspiration versus the sense of dread and despair. And I just get the dread and the despair
from both sides. Yeah. Front and center is the sort of setting up the throwdown between these two characters. And that just strikes me as a really weird thing to sell the movie on. I mean, on the one hand, yes, it's the title, but we know Justice League is coming. So we know they will eventually work together. So, I mean, at furthest this throwdown could happen would be maybe midway through Act 2 of this film. They'll reconcile and they'll go on to fight a bigger evil. You know that's what's going to happen. So selling this movie on Batman and Superman fighting, that's a little bit like selling the first Avengers movie on the fight between Iron Man and Thor.
Right. That was a memorable part. People knew about that part going into the film.
It was in the marketing. They showed glimpses, but they weren't like, here, come and see this. This is the reason to see this movie, because it was one small part of something much bigger.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about it, but if you just took that title card and replaced the V with a slash mark or a plus symbol or anything.
An ampersand, for crying out loud.
Thank you, yeah. Anything that just says Batman and Superman, you're still going to get the same group of people. You're still going to attract the same audience. I think what you sell this on is it's seeing them in the same movie for the first time. It's seeing them together on screen.
What we see of Ben Affleck, especially when he's in the suit, is very reminiscent of The Dark Knight Returns, Frank Miller. And what we see of sort of the setup of the fight is very much in that vein too. He's got the powered armor. Snyder's actually very clearly pulling heavily from The Dark Knight Returns.
But I don't think he's pulling the right things, or he's pulling from The Dark Knight Returns at the wrong time. The problem is the context, or lack thereof. When you think about the context of The Dark Knight Returns, it was a story about Superman and Batman at the end of their career.
Yeah.
And it was about these two guys, and actually the Superman-Batman fight was a very small part of The Dark Knight Returns. But it was still about these characters who had been friends for a long time. They broke up and they're coming back together as enemies on the opposite side of a philosophical and political ideology. We're not getting that in the context of the end of their careers for this film.
You're having them fight right out the gate when they first meet each other.
So you lose all the weight and all the history of what made that a momentous showdown.
You know, oddly, you know what you just made me think of was the newest Ninja Turtles movie, because what that movie did, which infuriated me, was because it was a reboot, there was obviously no history for it to pull from. But it tried to have moments that only would have worked if it had history. Like, it tried to have the fight between Splinter and Shredder be this big momentous event. Right. But within the context of the film itself, these two had never encountered each other before, ever. So it's like they're banking on the pop culture awareness of these two characters to give weight so that they won't have to in the film itself. I have a very strong feeling I'm going to come away with this movie angry at it for the same reason that I was angry at the second Fantastic Four movie, Amazing Spider-Man 2, and the second and third Hobbit movies, which is that when I saw the first one, in all three of those cases, I had issues. But I made certain allowances because I saw what they were going for and I saw the potential. I saw what they were trying to do. Here's what didn't work. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Please make corrections. So when everyone went, okay, we'll come back again, please fix these things, but then the sequels did the exact same thing that was done before with no corrections and no adjustments, now you've pissed me off because you've taken my benefit of the doubt and just gone, no, we're doing the same thing. It's a sequel to Man of Steel.
Sure.
I mean, let's be honest. And what is the standard pattern when you do series? The second one is the dark one. So when your first one is already so devoid of color and life and fun,
it's just being punched in the face.
I know. DC, do you remember fun?
Surely Fox knows how to make a fun superhero.
Well, you'd think so, but for all the complaining I just made about Batman v Superman, I will take that trailer over the Fantastic Four second trailer that has come out.
So the first teaser, it looked like the teaser for Interstellar.
Yep.
And Prometheus.
Yeah.
It looked like every other teaser that I have seen of this sort of genre. And the new trailer didn't show me anything different. I don't look at this teaser or this trailer and say, that's a Fantastic Four that I want to see. It's not.
Well, it doesn't feel like the Fantastic Four at all because they're very much going with, aside from the Interstellar sci-fi, fairly generic feel of the trailer, once we start to get into it a little bit more to the things that are unique to these characters, immediately we get I want to help my friends, I want to cure them. It's like, what, you want to cure them? You guys have the classic set of, oh my god, I want that, that's so cool powers. Even Ben Grimm is the Thing, at least in the comics, he takes it pretty well. He kind of goes, what are you going to do?
Remarkably well adjusted.
Punches a monster in the face.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody smiles in this entire trailer. I think we get like one awkward half grin out of Reed Richards, but there's not a single smile on Johnny Storm, of all people.
So the one tiny glimmer of light that I got from the teaser was there are a few images when we see the Human Torch fully engulfed in flame, where beneath the sort of white hot flames we see the body that looks just encased in red, just the color red in a vaguely humanoid form, and that looks like an old comic from the 60s or the 80s, either from John Byrne or Jack Kirby. And that was like, ooh, that looks right, that looks exactly like I want the Human Torch to look. But nothing else about what I saw from Michael B. Jordan was the way I want Johnny Storm to act.
Yeah.
And I got that from everybody. We get a lot of exposition and dialogue sort of voicing over, explaining the situation from older scientists or military figures that basically have to be the voice of exposition and science and authority so that our main character, Reed, doesn't come off as a know-it-all nerd. Which is exactly what he is. So the thing is, he should be the leader. You also need that sense of the family dynamic.
Yeah.
And for that family dynamic, he's got to be a little bit older and a little bit more mature than Miles Teller. They want to make him this child prodigy because they want 18-year-olds to go to this movie and enjoy it, or 13-year-olds, really.
And the other thing about this trailer, especially versus the Batman v Superman, is that the Batman v Superman trailer was consistent. It had a party line, it had a plan, it knew what it was, it knew what it was selling. I don't like what it's selling,
right,
but it's got a focus, it's got a clear mission. Fantastic Four seems embarrassed by the fact that it's a superhero movie. Because about 2/3 of the way in, kind of out of nowhere, if we should use our powers to help people. Oh, and Doom is coming. It's like, what? So it's just tacked on at the end. Oh, by the way, they're kind of superheroes and there's a villain. Oh, let's move on from that.
In the early and mid 2000s, there were a lot of goofy superhero movies.
Well, the Fantastic Four films, the first two, are solid examples of that.
And there were a lot of others that were goofy and tried to be fun and tried to have fun with the source material and failed for other reasons of quality. But I think you have something like the success of Batman Begins and then the monster success of The Dark Knight that followed it. And a lot of studios took the lesson from that if we take these movies super seriously, the audience will take them seriously, and the audience will come in droves.
Completely failing to take into account, at least you can ground him because he doesn't have ridiculous powers. Some of his villains do, but you don't have to use them if you don't want. And you can ground his world. When you're dealing with a guy who can stretch his limbs and a woman who can turn invisible, a guy who can fly while he's on fire, and a talking rock, you're not dealing in something that is meant to be grounded.
Right, and I think the problems with things like Man of Steel and The Dark Knight Rises, even the Amazing Spider-Man movies to a certain extent, I think tried to come off as more melodramatic and tonally dark, and just ended up becoming depressing and losing the sense of fun and joy of what these characters represent. I think the audiences have gone the way of the Disney and Marvel model, which is
come and have fun.
It would be awesome to be like this. Like, yeah, we would rather be Iron Man than Batman, because Iron Man gets to enjoy his life. What did you think of The Thing?
When I saw the images, I thought maybe it'll look better in motion, and it doesn't. It looks worse.
I didn't recognize it. It looked like a rock monster that might have been in The Hobbit.
It had no personality to it.
Yeah,
it was just this lumbering pile of rocks.
Well, how much personality do we get from the characters in this teaser? Let me go to the next character.
Yeah.
What do you remember about the Invisible Woman from this teaser?
She turned invisible at one point. She bad hate flirted with Reed Richards once. That's all I've got.
She was invisible. She has no presence in this teaser. Like, I cannot find it in me to support this movie. I know I won't like it. I don't want to see Batman versus Superman either. I have a feeling that I will, just because that's harder to turn away from. It's been a long time since I've gotten drunk and gone to see the movie. That might require some shots.
Might be time to revive that custom. Well, you know what? Just take a breath and remind yourself, Star Wars.
Star Wars! Good times.
There we go. So, I guess we'll wrap up on that note, and folks can find you a lot of places. You got a mess of podcasts these days, don't you?
I do. I'm going crazy with the podcasts now. First off, you can find my Star Wars podcast. Check out the blogger page, deadbuffinspies.blogspot.com, and from there you can find the Dead Buffin Spies podcast on iTunes. I also have a blog devoted to the DC Comics heroine Black Canary. You can find that at blackcanaryfan.blogspot.com, and the blog and podcast associated with it is Flowers and Fishnets, a Black Canary podcast. I've also got a third podcast in the works, but that's not coming until later in the summer.
All right. Busy man. Well, thank you very much for joining me. And what were your thoughts on these two trailers that came out? Whatever it is, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Until next time, this council is adjourned.